Thanks for stopping by InGoal Radio, the podcast, where blue paint is something you consider as a shade for the master bedroom. No, blue paint is our home. It's that comfy place that we stand, we kneel, we slide, and if necessary, we flip and we flop to keep that puck out. Blue paint is the place we all have in common on InGoal Radio, the podcast, presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports, Surrey, at thehockeyshop.com. Before you make a purchase on anything goaltending related, check them out in person or online. I'm Darren Millard, and today we are going to catch up with one of our good friends in the goaltending industry, the goaltending world. It's Maria Mountain, one of the world's leaders in goalie-specific off-ice training, which helps you on ice. Maria knows how to train. She understands the position because she took up the position. She is our go-to at InGoal for everything fitness and RevCon conditioning, and it only continues to blow up in the world of fitness as we bring in Kevin Woodley and David Hutchison, co-founders of InGoal magazine. And today, this is a real treat. What is the angle with Maria, Hutch?
What is the angle with Maria? When I started InGoal 10-ish years ago, I was actually coming off fairly recently a lot of time in grad school, studying exercise physiology as a master's student and eventually a PhD student. And I thought maybe what I could add to the goaltending world, because I was terrified of all these online arguments over how you hold your glove and all these crazy things before Twitter existed. I thought maybe the thing I could add was sports science and to add that side of things. So I did a little bit of reading on the goaltending side to see how things might be a bit more specific in our area, because I was actually studying swimmers in grad school. And I stumbled upon Maria Mountain and quickly realized I didn't have a lot to offer the subject because she knew it all and she was doing it all. So we had a few conversations, and I think it's fair to say, Kevin, that when we got going early in the early days of InGoal, I don't think we would still be here if Maria hadn't been a contributor to our early days.
Yeah, no, she did weekly columns for InGoal magazine in the early days, and I think a lot of goalies probably mutually beneficial. She would say too, like our audience grew, more eyeballs on what she was doing at a time when a lot of goalies were starting to realize, as we'll talk about with her, that hey, we play almost a different sport out there, so we need to train differently than the rest of the guys on the ice. And she kind of led that way, and she's got some great programs, some free programs. Some programs that have kept me healthy over the past 5 years, go from missing 2 or 3 stretches every season due to groin injuries to haven't had one, knock on wood, in the last 3 or 4. It's just, she's perfect. She's the best at this, and the chance to really dig into it with her, everything from, what age to start, what to do as an older goalie, how to get ready for a game. And we touched on everything with her. And as usual, she was fantastic. The energy she brings on the podcast is the energy she brings to her training and to goaltending. And I think the goalie world's better for it. So pretty blessed to have had her in our lives at InGoal, and pretty appreciative that she took so much time out to join us this week.
Yeah, she's one of those people that just makes me smile. And one of my biggest regrets in the world of goaltending is not having met her or had the chance to connect with her when I was much younger, because she helps you so much and motivates you so much. So that conversation is coming up with Maria Mountain, who's worked with National Hockey League goaltenders at all levels, but really knows her stuff and is motivated by making each individual athlete better. We start off though with our gear segment, Kevin, and a little bit different take this week as we connect with our friends out at Source for Sports.
Yeah, the Hockey Shop, source for sports in Surrey. It's where I go as a lower mainland Vancouver suburb resident for all my goaltending gear needs for the past decade. They're in my backyard, and that makes me lucky because they're the best at what they do, whether it's the world-famous skate sharpening from Cecil. People come from all over the burbs, all over the lower mainland to get their edges. From him, they bring in multiple sets of steel. He does them all. They go home. They're good for a couple weeks. Then they bring them all back and get them done again. Down in the basement where we're going to visit Cam again this week to talk about gear. They have a huge selection, all the top brands. And that's where this week is different. Whether it's in person at the store, Hockey Shop Source for Sports, or at thehockeyshop.com, we've talked a lot and we do a lot of testing in InGoal with the highest level stuff. the pro gear, and which most of it's launching. The new EFlex 4 pads and gloves, skates and stick, all coming out this week, April 26th. But this week we want to talk about something that the next level down, and that's sort of that second price point gear. Why is it less expensive, and why should you buy it from the hockey shop? And Cam did a great job of sort of breaking it down. They don't just buy what everyone else buys. They've got enough buying power with the big brands to get special features added. And the features they added to their next price point down of the EFlex 4 line, which is called the 4.9, they're the kind of things that as a goalie, you're going to appreciate, whether a young goalie coming up or a beer leaguer. Extra padding in the glove, a pro level knee stack. It's not just about graphics and things like that. It's about finding the features that matter to goalies and seeing how much influence they can use to have those features extended down the lines to some of the lower price points. That's what we're focused on this week when I caught up with Cam in the hockey shop. That's why you should go to the hockey shop source for sports in Surrey or thehockeyshop.com, because these are the type of buying decisions they make at the hockey shop, and you're the goalies that benefit from it. So we had a chance to sit down with Cam and talk this week about the EFlex 4.9 line that'll be in stores and online this Friday, April 26th.
Let's go shopping.
Welcome back to the Hockey Shop, Source for Sports here in Surrey. We're in the basement, or as I call it, Goalie Heaven with Cam Matwiv. And this week we're going to talk about the latest from CCM, the EFlex 4 line. We've already talked about the Pro line though, Cam. This week I want to talk about the next level down. They call it the CCM E4.9 line. This is your next price point down. Not everyone can afford the highest of high end, the pro level product. Frankly, if you've got a kid that's going through it more than one set a year or even a set a year, and depending on the level, they don't need it, and it's just prohibitive. So I wanted to talk about the next level down, in part because some of the custom features that you have through the Hockey Shop Source for Sports and here at the Hockey Shop and thehockeyshop.com include some elements that aren't going to be available from other retailers in the E4.9. You've got some special features exclusive to you. Walk me through these, because for the most part, this is a similar design pad to the Pro. Just a little different foams and different quality of materials, but you've put some upgrades, things that you think will make this a better pad at this level for your customers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even starting off with, say, for example, the knee rolls. Like on a stock 4.9 pad, you're going to see a radius knee roll, which means it's rounded, which also means you can get some slight unpredictability when the puck hits it. What we did, flatten them out, you're now going to get a more true rebound like it would be with just a straight flat face pad, but you still get that knee roll look, so you get the best of both worlds.
So traditional look, a little bit more of a modern playability.
That's correct. It's definitely a great little call out, and honestly, it's another good upgrade, but that's not where we stop. The knee stacks.
Yeah. Now, this is a big one. This is an important one, especially because, especially for the beer leaguer, the big-bodied, heavy guys that are going down on these pads on a regular basis into the butterfly. It looks like you've improved the quality of the knee roll on your 4.9 exclusive to the Hockey Shop Source for Sports and thehockeyshop.com.
Yeah, so we took the Pro knee stack that you're going to find on an EFlex 4, and now you're getting it at the mid-range level price point. Normally, you'll just have a regular standard foam knee stack, nothing too special and exciting about it. But this one, a little bit more rigid, again, designed to put up with that kind of abuse of that constant up and down, and more stable when you're dropping the butterfly. So, again, nice, great feature. Beyond that, we have a couple of exclusive colorways, which also lead into the trapper and blocker, which we can cover, but also additional sizing, which you won't get anywhere else. So the stock pad is limited to a few smaller sizes, for example, not as many in between. So, we won't have a 33+2 or anything like that, but we will. So we have an additional couple sizes there, really kind of rounds out the line for you.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it. 33+1, 33+2, 34+1, 34+2, 35+1, and intermediate as well. 29-1, 31, 31-1, 32-1. I'm like an auctioneer at this point. Point being, You've got some options that, again, like I said, the idea here is you've brought in some options that not every store is going to have. So let's make our listeners aware of how that can help them out if they're looking for this level of pad. Let's move over to the glove. Again, we're talking about the EFlex 4 4.9 line from CCM. This is the one level below the full Pro. Again, in the glove, what you've done is incorporated what would normally be pro level options into the second price point pad. Walk me through what you've got in the glove that separates it from other stores.
So 2 really big spec callouts here. One that's a little bit less exciting and one that's really exciting.
Give us the sexy stuff first.
The sexy stuff first. So D3O in the palm. Definitely a huge upgrade. This will be basically the same internals that you would have in a standard game ready Pro EFlex 4 off the shelf. This gives the mid-range level a big step up in terms of for protection and durability aspect based on that protection over time. Whereas, a stock glove, may wear down, 6 months down the road, you might be starting to get those stingers depending on how much you're playing. This is something to help really extend that life for sure.
I would think, and I'd love to know how you pulled this off, because to us, D3O in the palm of a glove is a really nice feature on the CCM line. And I would think one of my fears, if I'm a beer leaguer who sometimes plays maybe above my, like if I'm sort of a mid-level guy, but sometimes I'm playing in games where some guys can really fire it, is if I buy a lower price point glove, am I going to get the same level of protection? Having the D3O in the palm gives you that similar level of protection, at least in that area, that coverage. I would also think for kids that are looking at this model, again, maybe you're called up, you're playing at a higher level, you get moved up a level late in the season. Are you comfortable taking those shots and not feeling stingers? Having the D3O in this palm versus buying it somewhere else and not getting that layer of protection could be a real difference maker.
I didn't even need to sell it. You just explained why we did it. So,
well, I'm kind of, the truth is I'm kind of one of those beer leaguers myself. Every once in a while I play over my head against guys who can actually shoot the puck, and I'm a little bit, as we've established, kind of a soft and a baby, so I need all the protection I can get. So that's the truth why I know that. What are the other specific to you source for sports hockey shop?
So once again, beyond the specific colorways to match up with the pads, we also went with a skate lace pocket.
Skate lace pocket in a second price point glove. I like it.
That's correct. And now, to be honest, this is always something that you can come and see us and get done aftermarket by Cecil, who we've talked about before. But that said, all of our gloves are going to be coming stock with it up on the wall, so it's not even a spec you need to ask for. It's already there.
So like I say, these are pro levels. And this is why we praise the hockey shop. This is why we talk about coming here for all your goaltending needs. They think about details like this, the kind of details that you might appreciate in a pro level glove, might not be able to afford, might not necessarily need at this point. You can get it in that second price point with the EFlex 4.9 line. Lastly, Cam, the blocker.
Yeah, and blocker's a blocker to a bit of a point, but the sexy upgrade that we got for it is D3O in the first finger. So this is something you see on the Premier 2, Pro Blocker, and also the EFlex 4. They're continuing on with it. It just gives you a little bit of extra protection, especially on the tip of your index finger for pucks riding up off that stick.
Yeah, we've called this out before in the main line. It's a feature they added a few years ago that we really like. You're right, especially if you use that sort of trigger finger with the index finger down along the paddle. If you get one that rides up and it rides up with enough velocity to get out, through or make impact on that outer roll of protection, that outer layer of protection to the point where you feel it in your finger. To be honest, our experiences with D3O, kind of like Poron with Bauer, they're nothing but positive. Like that can be the difference between a really bad bruise and a break. So adding it there makes a lot of sense. But again, something we've only associated with the highest end pro level glove. You're offering it now in the EFlex 4.9 line, senior and intermediate.
That's correct.
All right. So there you go. CCM EFlex 4.9. It's the second price point. Ballpark, what are we talking here in terms of differences? About half the price on a set of pads?
Pretty close to half the price of a set of pads.
If you want all the details, you can go see Cam at the Hockey Shop Source for Sports in Surrey. You can check out all the prices specific on the gloves and the blockers of the EFlex 4.9 line at the Hockey Shop Source for Sports. Or if you've got specific questions about some of the options, some of the colorways they have in stock before you come down, give Cam a jingle at
604-589-8299.
Oh, now he's going full Barry White with this thing. It's getting a little creepy here in the basement. Cam, thanks for walking us through this. I think it's this is an important thing. Not everybody's buying pro, not everybody's buying full custom. I love the fact that you guys have taken care of your customers by making sure you have special options available in other price points. Now that we've shared that with the folks, hopefully they come check it out. April 26th, so it's live. This stuff will be in stores. It'll be online. Make sure you check it out at the Hockey Shop Source for Sports. Cam, thanks for the time.
Thanks, Cam.
Once again, Cam raising his game with the big voice read. Pretty solid.
It's getting a little deeper every week. Pretty soon, he's gonna need his own dressing room down there.
And specific colors of Smarties and M&Ms. Hutch, how do people get in touch with us?
If you'd like to get in touch with us, send your questions to podcast@ingoalmag.com. That's podcast@ingoalmag.com.
And those emails and those connections are strange how some relationships just blossom out of things like that. People just reaching out. It's how I first got in contact with our feature interview, Maria Mountain, a number of years ago. And you guys have go back more than that with her. It's our feature interview. One of the great resources in the world of goaltending. She can make you fitter, she can protect you from injury, and in the process, allow you to enjoy the position a whole lot more. The fancy intro is all taken care of, so here she is. You know I'm a big fan of yours, but for those that aren't fully up to date on your background and where you came from into this world of goaltending, Maria, give us the 411 on Maria Mountain.
I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. So I grew up in London, Ontario. In the 70s, I was a kid. So in London, girls didn't play hockey. There wasn't even ringette here. But thankfully, I grew up in a neighborhood full of boys. And to me, they seemed like a lot more fun to play with than the girls. So we were out on the driveway in the backyard rinks playing hockey every day after school. And I was always Ken Dryden against Mike Pullman here. So I did have a love for the sport and for the goaltending position. Fast forward, studied physical education at university. I was actually a cross-country ski racer was my varsity sport, but did a master's degree, ended up working at the Fowler Kennedy Sport Medicine Clinic on the campus of the University of Western Ontario, where got to sort of be the exercise specialist and help these athletes get back to play. And that's where I started training Jeff Hackett, who was the first NHL goalie I ever worked with. And, the butterfly was brand new. And, so it was an awesome experience working with him. When I started my own business, Revolution Sport Conditioning, and then an online division of that was really Hockey Training Pro is what it was called. Anytime I posted an article for the goalies, there was instant feedback. I've always loved goalies, as a little bit odd. We are, but I love it. Actually, I find it amazing, the passion for the position. So, the science, the biomechanics, the anatomy, even the injuries, I find it fascinating. So that's why I've just decided to deep dive and go all in, and sort of make my professional life helping goalies stop more pucks with fewer injuries.
So it was the feedback that you got from goalies, just basically searching for any type of edge or advantage or just knowledge that got you down this path of goaltending?
Yeah, it really was, because I think also I knew how I was training the goalies that I worked with, but it opened my eyes that, oh my God, there's still, like most of the hockey coaches out there, they're like, you're the same, do the same stuff. And even a lot of most of the strength coaches that I really even admired and looked up to, they were like, just do the same thing. And so, I saw a need because, we'll probably get into it a bit, but even especially with the injury profile, they need something different.
That's funny, because that's exactly how I came in contact with you. Was seeing your work online through social, and got to. I was a subscriber long before I ever got to know you. So that's really neat that I was just part of that pack. Woody, Hutch, follow up here.
Yeah, let's just dive into what you opened up right there, Maria. all the coaches that say just do the same thing. And so maybe you can tell us a little bit more about why goalies shouldn't be doing the same thing and what we should be doing. Can you encapsulate that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I can. And some strength coaches don't like it when you make these big dramatic comparisons. But honestly, does the pitcher on the baseball team do the same training as the first baseman? Well, hopefully not. Their jobs are very different. So I think if we just boil it down, obviously the mobility demands are way, way different. The way they need to use their hips and their body is completely different. The energy system is completely different. They're not an endurance animal. They're still a repeat sprinter, but we don't know how long their shift is gonna last or how long they're gonna have a recovery period. And then we add in the element that a lot of what they do is frontal plane movement. So instead of sort of skating up and down the ice, they're moving side to side. And then I think one of the things that's still one of the most overlooked elements is the vertical agility. That into and out of the butterfly is just like it's a treasure chest of sort of training ideas and exercises for me. So it's different. The demands are different. The training should be different. Now, not completely different, not like they're in the circus and standing on a stability ball and juggling and all this, but maybe 70-75% is similar. They still need to be strong, explosive, powerful athletes, but then that 20-25%, it needs to go exactly to what they need.
It's almost like we're playing a different sport, right?
Yeah, it really is.
So do you have any advice for the young goaltender who's being asked to do the same thing as the rest of his team? Because partly what could they be doing differently on the side? Partly, I guess, how do you talk to a coach? Because you're putting them in a bit of a tough spot if they all run away from listening to this podcast and tell their coaches they're doing it all wrong. What are we going to do?
Yeah, and it's tricky because it really depends on the coach. And again, there are some coaches and strength coaches that I really like and admire, and they're smart people, but they'll still say things like, well, the goalie, they think they're special, and we don't want them thinking they're special. And it's like, okay, that's a great reason. So the kids that I train online, we get the whole spectrum. So we get the coaches or the trainer or the strength coach that works with the team who's actually like, oh, that's really cool. I'd like to see what you're doing. They're keen to learn because, again, just intuitively, you look at what they do and it's like, that's different. Then you get some that's like, no, this is what the team is doing and you're on the team. And then I think that's just, okay, yeah, I'm on the team and yes, sir, I'll do what the team does. But then on the back end, you need to be doing some, a little bit that sort of 20% to help yourself.
I guess the one question, and I think honestly, and maybe it's definitely getting better, but we're probably lying to ourselves if we think it's just the kids' hutch. Maria's probably experienced this. Like, it wasn't that long ago that I knew NHL teams that were sending young goaltenders home with weight training programs that included a whole bunch of bicep and chest work. And it was just like, seriously, are you like, what decade are we in? And it still exists right up to the top level. So I guess, finding a way to deal with that is one thing. I guess what I would wonder, are there any, as much as sometimes you just have to follow along, or even at the NHL level, my favorite one was being told I have to do so many bench presses at a certain weight in order to pass the strength test the next year. So you have to follow along. You have to meet those sort of demands. Are there any that you worry about where it's like, wow, hey, we're counterproductive here? I hear a lot about squats and certain types of things where what you're being asked to do, you might want to really push, maybe not push back firmly, but say like, listen, this has the potential to be negative on me as a goaltender, to have a negative effect, especially for a young goalie. Or any that jump out?
Yeah, there are a lot. I think like an exercise we don't use with any athletes anymore is a back squat, like a barbell back squat, just because you can with a bar on your back, you can squat heavy and really poorly. So if you've been in a high school gym or probably a regular fitness club, you've seen the guy or the girl who's got loaded up the bar and they squat down and then, their back's completely rounded as they, kind of inchworm it back up. And, that's dangerous. It's not healthy for them. I think it's sometimes in like a high school setting where they actually have a gym facility, it's a lot of machines. So they're using leg press machines. They're, they go to the gym themselves and they think they should be using that groin machine thing. And, I think those are, especially the leg press, I think are counterproductive. I think there's a lot. I still, sometimes I'll post exercises and people still comment like, "Oh, you should do his P90X." That's counterproductive. Not that it isn't a really hard workout, and some people love it, which is bless you. But for training a goalie, I would say counterproductive.
So are you saying if that leg machine's no good, does that mean that Hutch's, Suzanne Summers' Thighmaster toning machine is no longer valid that's actually not helping him stop pucks?
It's the weekly pick on Hutch show, isn't it?
I got to take my shots where I can, Hutch.
Have you seen this guy in his swim trunks? The guy's shapely thighs, so keep at it. It's working.
Woody can't stop shots, so he takes them.
The agility versus strength. Talk to me about that.
Yes, this is a great question, actually. So, because I get also people say, well, I'm strong enough, I just need to be faster. Okay, right. I appreciate that. But building strength is your building block to speed and power. It is the easiest way to make an athlete quicker. So, power or speed is sort of your rate of force development. So how fast can we fire those muscles and exert a certain amount of force? The rate at which we can fire a muscle is somewhat limited by our twitch type. We can still make incremental improvements, but no matter how much I practice sprinting, I'll never be an explosive sprinter. But I can change that force production element. So if I am applying more force over the same amount of time, I'm faster. So we do work on building max strength, but we try to build that max strength in a useful and functional way. So if we get so that an athlete is front squatting, and it depends on their age, so I won't say a specific number, but that's like, wow, it looks really great. That's a good front squat. We'll take them into something that's more challenging to their hip stabilization, to their hip and torso stabilization, those single leg squats or rear foot elevated squats or squat lateral to get that adaptation. But strength, if we want to push our speed, then strength is where we build that reservoir. Agility is a skill. So that's the thing too. You've all seen it in the rinks. Young and sometimes not so young goalies doing their agility training, and they're in the ladder and their feet are going like a little egg beater and but their body's all over the place and their arms are flipping and they're hitting the ladder and they're up on their tiptoes. And so the key element there is we need to have that force production capacity, but we also need to take the time to teach the skill of agility and how to position your feet and how to absorb and how to stabilize. So that starts slow, and it's very much like, Darren, I know we're both trying to learn how to play the guitar, and it's very much like, as much as I'd love to just get on that guitar and wail, I need to learn how to put my fingers so the strings don't buzz, and then build from there.
So just is slower better in the agility side of things to do it right, or how do you decide when to push the agility part on the speed part?
Yeah, so it's just competency based. So slower when you're learning, and then as you get the competency, okay, now we'll pick it up. Now you can apply that force, and you can learn. You can practice concentrating, being explosive. The other thing actually that I'll chime in about any like speed and agility, it shouldn't be fatiguing. So we'll see lots of training programs or athletes working with their teams, they'll be like, oh, we did speed today. It was brutal. Okay, then that's not speed, that's stamina. Even though you're doing speed exercises, that's actually a stamina workout. Speed should be hard on your brain because you're trying to execute it perfectly and you're actually thinking of being explosive in the right way with the right forces. It shouldn't be a gasser.
It sounds a lot like practicing a new skill on the ice, in the crease. You have to, you start slowly, you sort of perfect the method before you add the speed to it. Like you can't start quick most of the time. You end up usually just ingraining bad habits.
Yeah, exactly. It's just our body knows what we practice. Our body doesn't know, oh, that was a good rep, this is a bad rep. Our body knows you did 7 like this and you did 4 like this. So I'm gonna do the one that you've practiced the most. And so you decide, is it gonna be a good rep or a poor rep?
Before the guys go into too much further and the goaltending front, because these guys are so incredibly dialed in on injuries and equipment and what it can help you and what doesn't help you. When you talk about strength and agility, is one more important than the other? Do you need one before you can go to the other one? That relationship, and then I'm out.
I think they're on a continuum, I would say. I think the most important. So when I look at an athlete, at a goalie, it's the first thing is, can they move? If a goalie can't move the way a goalie needs to move, we need to figure that out, whether it's through mobility training or physical therapy. If they just know, like, my body just doesn't do that. Can they stabilize is the next. Are they strong the way a goalie needs to be strong? And then are they explosive and agile? So, and I wouldn't say that one is more important, but those are the boxes we need to check.
Fascinating.
And where does I'm trying to think, like, I'm picturing it as like a diagram. Where does mobility fit in all that? Like, is that at the foundation of all of that? Like, is it all tied in together in terms of having the?
Sorry, that comes in. Yeah, that's, can they move and can they stabilize together? So really just, I guess, can they move? And I kind of look at it more in a functional sense rather than just like, can you do the splits or can you touch your toes? But can they move is, I guess, flexibility, which is just how much can we stretch this muscle, sitting on the living room floor, or if I took your leg and passively moved it, how far could you move? Mobility adds the stability element. So mobility is really, how much range of motion do I have at the joint that I can still control and stabilize? So goalies right now are still in flexibility world. Goalies have to stretch. I'm going to stretch so I can do the splits like Jonathan Quick. That puts you in positions of vulnerability because it puts you in your muscle in a lengthened position where it has no strength and it has no experience. It's like, God, I've never been here before. And a lot of times that will result in strains and injuries. So some of the other, like the mobility training that we do where we're generating tension in those lengthened positions, that's a key and that's a foundation. Like if they don't have that, then we're just making them stronger and faster so they can hurt themselves more.
Talk to us a little bit more about stretching. I like your explanation there. I think it's a good one. I think that I've got a guy who's lived through that too. But so many coaches, so many parents, it's the only thing they know about training or warming up or whatever. So it's the first thing we do is we stretch. So what is the first thing that we do, and or does stretching ever fit into that? I know your mobility program is one of the first things that you share with people for the butterfly. But where does stretching fit in, and what should people be doing before they go out on the ice if we can only have a limited amount of time to do that?
Yeah, and stretching does have a place. And I think if we're talking to those younger athletes, those younger goalies who are growing, one thing we forget is that our bodies grow from the bones. There's no coordinated effort of, okay, muscles and bones, we're going to grow, an inch this summer. It's just the bone takes off. And now all of a sudden, this kid who used to be really flexible can't touch their toes. And so, I think there is a place for stretching in there just to kind of help the muscles remodel. To answer your question, if you're going to be jumping on the ice and maybe have 10 minutes to warm up at the rink. I would bring a lacrosse ball. I would start with some self-myofascial release of sort of the upper glutes, like up where it almost ties into the top of your hip and your pelvis. I would do my hip flexors, and I would.
This is rolling, right? Like rolling.
Rolling
Okay.
on that. And I'd probably do the bottom of my foot. And if people think that self-myofascial release is sort of mumbo jumbo or you don't need to do it, or I don't know what it does some tissue remodeling. So your muscles have a layer around them that's called fascia, and it actually surrounds every single little microfibril, and those are divided into bundles, and it surrounds the bundles, and those are in bigger bundles, and so really when your tendons come out the ends of your muscles, that's the fascia coming out. And sometimes that fascia can get adhered down to the underlying muscle, for lack of a better term. So we need to get in there and just kind of work those two layers to get the moving. Because if we're adhered, then you're going to stretch all you want, and you're not going to get a change. So we would do some of that. Then we might do a couple of static stretches. Maybe hip flexor stretch, maybe a groin stretch, something like that. But we usually get a little more dynamic. So we would do we do like a half kneeling rock back. So we're in a stretch position, but moving through a range of motion. Then we would go into a dynamic warm up. So this is like, your walking quad stretch, walking hamstring stretch, walking leg cradle. And that, like, you can do that for 10 minutes and then get on the ice. But the key is, even when I work at camps that have, high level players, they go through, or you see on TV, like even soccer teams, baseball players, they go through it like they're zombies, think of what you're doing. What are you feeling? Where's your body positioned? Because again, that also sets, I think, a mental tone for, okay, I'm going out and I'm going to execute with precision and excellence. And so, yeah, that's a long answer to a short question.
No, it's a good answer, though.
Well, you have.
Sorry, Hutch. I was going to say myofascial release. Essentially, for those who don't get the term, it's foam rolling for the most. That's the sort of generic term for it. But I've seen that in NHL rinks. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to film it anymore because we're not allowed to film the sort of stuff that goes on outside the locker room before a game. But the focus, just like when you're doing an exercise, as you talked about, or when you're learning a new drill, like the focus and the idea that if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right in the repetition. Like you see that in these guys. And you mentioned the foot. The bottom of the foot is one that I think gets overlooked a lot. Maybe explain why that's important, because we've seen it, whether it's Carey Price pulling out a golf ball and rolling out the bottom of his foot before he goes on the ice every time, or Ryan Miller doing the same in Vancouver. I mean, Miller's a guy who's as connected to his body as anyone I've ever met. And that's one of his staples, talks about the bottom of the foot all the time. I think most of us overlook it. I don't, because I do your program, but I think a lot of goalies do. Why is that one important?
It's cool. And I really enjoyed your episode with Ryan Miller. It was fantastic. But yeah, I'll circle back to that. I think it really just highlights the importance of the myofascial release. So fascia also has the highest density of sensory neurons, compared to like our muscle fibers. So if you do a little experiment, so finish listening to this, go grab a golf ball, lacrosse ball, tennis ball, whatever. Take off your shoes, stand with your feet right together, your knees perfectly like straight, and bend down to touch your toes, whatever it is, your kneecaps, your toes, put your hands flat on the floor, whatever it is. And then do a minute of just rolling that ball on the bottom of your foot with, to the base of from the base of your heel to the base of your toes, all over that bottom aspect. And with enough pressure that it's not painful, but you feel it. Do that on each foot for a minute. Put your feet back together, lock your knees out straight, and bend forward again. And you're probably going to notice you get 2 to 4 more inches. And again, if you ask somebody, well, what limits that forward bend? Well, hamstring tightness, back erector tightness, yada, yada. Well, I didn't stretch my hamstrings. I did nothing to my back extensors. All I did was have an impact on, and I'm assuming it's the sensory neurons in the bottom aspect of the foot.
Okay, that makes no sense, though. How does that work?
It doesn't. But again, if you think of fascia as a living thing, and you guys know me well enough. I'm not a woo-woo kind of, but it is a living thing, and it isn't independent. So there's a guy named Thomas Myers. If you're a super geek like I am, read his book, Anatomy Trains. It's not about training like it's in like choo-choo trains, but he's a passionate guy to talk about anatomy, and he's a very interesting teacher. He talks about how you could dissect right from the bottom of the foot all the way up the gastrocs, hamstrings, spinal erectors, all the way up basically to the top of your eyebrow as one piece. So he talks about the body, instead of being divided into, I'm an exercise physiologist, I should know how many muscles are in the body, but I don't remember, but instead of it being, 200 muscles, that it's, one muscle with 200 different divisions. So that fascia does communicate, from one area of the body to another, which again, I think really has an impact on how we train goalies. And it's not just, okay, well, how I use my hips, but it's like, well, how do I use my hips with my torso? Or how does my body respond if I'm reaching with my leg, but then have to rotate and reach with my arm? And it's so awesome.
Wow. It is fascinating. Do you guys want to get into some goaltending stuff?
Well, I want to ask, I mean, you started all this by watching goaltenders, but you're playing now. What's that experience been like, getting on the ice, trying some of this, feeling the movements? Is it make a difference? Is it any different? Are there things you've discovered from a different side of things now that you're on the ice versus, like you said, not that just studying it or watching it wasn't enough by any stretch, but how's it changed your approach in any way at all?
Yeah, and I think it isn't enough just to study it. To study it, you can learn the forces and apply the physiology, apply the biomechanics. You don't know how it feels. And nobody, I was on the ice today with actually a goalie I've trained forever, and he was giving me some pointers, but unless you put on the pad, you have no idea how hard it is, and even just recoveries. And so the bulk of the equipment, how you move. So it has changed things for sure. It's been invaluable, and I love it too. And it's funny because I'm terrible, and I have no reason to expect I would be anything else. But
what's the thing that stood out the most?
The thing that stood out the most? Yeah, I think for me it's just how physically demanding, like recovering from the butterfly is, like up down. That's just how bad that gasses you, and just sort of holding the post and staying in a low ready position, and just saying like, God, would you please just shoot the puck over the blue line? Like that's like,
shoot it at me or get it out.
Just shoot it over the blue line, like, please.
So you've had a chance to be on the ice with some goalie coaches, working with kids. You've seen camps from youngsters right up to the NHL. As a, if you'll forgive the term, an outsider, somebody new to the coaching game, is there something you would change about sort of the default model of how a camp or a session with a kid works, so that it works better physiologically?
Well, I'm blessed because I get to sit in on some really great coaches, and so I'm usually learning mostly what's working right. But if I look back at when I was more starting out and would be at all of them, I think too many coaches take pride in just crushing a kid, leaving them. And I've worked it too, where we have a hockey team come in for training at the gym, and the coach and the dad and everyone just kill them, just kill them. And the kids will come out of the gym, and dad or the coach is there like, is that the hardest workout you've ever done? And the kid's like, no, and it's because we're trying to teach them, how to be better athletes. And they'll be like, oh, geez, like, yeah, you're not hardly sweating. It's like our success as a coach isn't how much the kid's sweating or how tired they are. Like a monkey could just make you tired. It's, did this kid get better? So I think there needs to be more rest intervals. But you can use that to work on maybe puck handling,
Yes.
something that you can still use it as productive time. Because I also understand if you're, mom and dad have paid X number of dollars for you to be at this camp, you can't sort of be sitting in the corner half the time. But there's things you can work on that will still really help you be a better goalie. And I think too, sometimes, and it happens in training too, is that, oh, this is what the NHL players, so I guess RVH is the first thing that popped in my head. Oh, this RVH and the NHL players do it, so you need to do it, 8-year-old Johnny. And it's like, Johnny don't need to be doing the RVH. Johnny needs to learn how to skate, and he should probably be playing goalie hockey. Will help his development more than learning the RVH. But
that reminds me of I think it was, I can't remember who we had on the ice. It might have been Ryan Miller. In Vancouver, working with Alex Auld, and a parent that also worked with Alex comes up to us afterwards, and I was out there running video on it, and says, it might have been Eddie Lack, actually. Anyways, the parent comes up and says, you guys were just doing a photo shoot, right? Like, that wasn't an actual practice. And me and Alex are like, no, what do you mean? Well, I mean, like, he wasn't soaked in sweat, gassed, exhausted. And it was like, no, this is how pros practice. It's about details and repetitions and making sure all the repetitions are good, because 5 bad ones are going to override 5 good ones. So those lessons seem to apply right throughout. You mentioned how hard it was being on the ice, going up and down, and learning just how tough that is. And we've talked about practice drills. And obviously it's a hot topic around minor hockey right up to the NHL. Butterfly drop, hips. How do we find a balance? How do we keep goalies healthy? I know there's some equipment tweaks we can do. I'm not sure there is a perfect answer, but what's the best practices advice you can give to either parents, to coaches of minor hockey coaches, to keep in mind with young goaltenders in terms of the demands, being conscious of the demands they're putting on these kids?
I certainly don't have the answer, but I think having another goalie at practice is a great idea. And a lot of times the goalies don't like it because they want the shots, but I think it helps reduce sort of the repetitions that they're getting in some of those positions. And it's cool because in the NCAA, they can track metrics on the guys and the girls. And, you see that what a goalie does in practice physiologically is nothing like what they do in a game and what they need to do to excel in their sport. So adding a third goalie is probably a good idea. I think, as a coach, maybe just giving the butterfly a lot of respect and cluing into the idea that these bones are growing and developing. And we don't really know what the impact is of the butterfly on those growing bones. I was involved in a study when I was doing my master's degree. It wasn't my study. I was just helping collect data, but looking at like a twist in the humerus, so the big long bone of your arm, in baseball players. And so kids who'd been throwing a baseball from the time they were little kids. And there actually was a twist in their humerus from throwing a baseball. There was an adaptation to their sport at the bony level. So I think people say, "Oh, it doesn't hurt. My hips feel fine. My hips feel fine." Well, that's right. Your hips feel fine, and until it doesn't feel fine. Anyone who's had a disc injury, it's like, yeah, it felt fine until I bent over to pick up my T-shirt off the shirt and or off the floor and couldn't get up again. And it's not that picking up the T-shirt made that injury occur. It's that, over years and years and years, like a coat hanger, a metal coat hanger, you can bend it this way once, twice, it's fine. And then it'll go. So I think, just being cognizant that these are cumulative trauma injuries, and they need to learn the butterfly, but not just as a default, smash, smash, smash. It's a tool that they need to learn, but probably learning to skate is the most important tool they could have.
One of the things that I remember I did a lot of help the research for a Sports Illustrated article back when I used to string for them by David Epstein about sort of the hip injuries and the butterfly. And we found kids as young as 12 and 13, and this is like 7-8 years ago, that were having the surgery and needed the surgery. One of the theories at that time was that too much, everybody sort of, whether you have a perfect hip socket or not, or you get that sort of that edge to the top of the femur that can dig out the hip, can be genetic. One of the theories was maybe too much weight-bearing exercise at a young age could lead to that malformed femur. I don't know if they ever proved that. It was sort of, again, it was a while ago in a running theory. I guess the question is, is this part of why you don't recommend kids to a certain age do necessarily your program or maybe do a modified version? Like what's the advice to, because let's be honest, there's parents out there right now that want their 8-year-old training like an NHLer. Why is it important that they don't? And how do you keep them busy without worrying about breaking them?
And that's a really good question too. I think the reason, so even at Revolution at the gym, we don't start an athlete till they're 14 years old, or if they're 13, but it's the summer before they go in high school, we'll start them a little early. And part of it is, it hurts the business because a lot of kids by the time they're 12 already have a strength coach that, but I think for one, I want kids to be involved in a sport and pursue sport at a high level because they love the sport so much that it's a fun, special treat. And, when I get old enough, I'm going to be able to train to be better at my sport. If a kid starts training for sport, specifically when they're 14, if they have the talent and the skill and the drive to go far, well, they're going to have, a good 15 years of training ahead of them. So that, that's enough. So if they've been training like a pro since their 8 years, and I've seen it when I started out, I would train younger athletes they really want to do it. Well, I used to want to do kind of weird things too when I was a kid. My mom and dad were like, no, you're not going to be doing that. So, I want them to be doing it because it's fun, not because, I'm going to be in the NHL. And I don't think it helps. I think it can contribute to burnout. I think these kids too, just, from 8 years old, see themselves as a hockey player, 10 years old or 12 years old. And if that doesn't work out for them, they don't have another peer group. They don't play other sports. It's just, okay, well, what now? So that's why I personally, why I do it. I think, keep them busy playing lots of other sports and not playing hockey year round. And I think even martial arts is great. If it's like, well, these sports, this doesn't work with the family schedule. Okay. Martial arts would be great. Teach some discipline, balance, strength.
So more about a philosophy in terms of young people as opposed to worried about specific weight bearing stuff and the butterfly and things like that at too young an age. Or is that part of it too?
Well, I think if I'm coaching a young kid, then I can put together a program that would be age and skill appropriate for them. It isn't my passion for, some of those reasons and just other reasons. I'm not a great cheerleader. It's like, we're going to work and we're going to do the work and this is how we're going to do it, kid. But, I think a kid with the proper coaching, there's nothing wrong with strength training at a young age. It's not going to stunt your growth. It's not going to. But again, if you overdo it, and again, I've talked to dads who literally, are like, well, what, my kid, because they maybe were a power lifter. Well, I've had my kid doing 10 sets of 10 back squats. Oh, I think that's kind of probably a bit too much for like a 10-year-old. Well, but he can do it and he can do like 165. It's like, well, it's like one of those cases, like just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Sounds like good advice.
Here we go. We're getting onto a roll. You promised me you'd be really ornery because it's past your bedtime now.
Wait, I either get grumpy or I get punchy.
This is awesome. So since we're on that, talk to us about box jumps. I think we should have all our kids doing box jumps, shouldn't we? Aren't those great?
Now only if it's onto 45-pound plates that are so stacked that they rock back and forth, and then only if it goes on the Instagrams. Yeah,
exactly.
Perfect. So can we get one of those of you doing one from the gym tomorrow?
Yeah, for sure we will. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, it's again and then I think there should be league suspensions for NHL players who post these pictures on Instagram because you just know every kid's going to be trying to do it.
But why are they bad?
Because it's just a test of how high you can pull your knees up. It has no impact on I can jump as high as I can jump onto an 18-inch box as well as I can jump as high as I can jump onto a 42-inch box. It has no impact on my power production. It sure makes the downside if I miss the jump a lot more dramatic if I'm trying to jump up on a box. But it has, other than just, that looks really cool, it has no impact on your performance outcome. So again, my number one job is keeping you healthy. And, that is negligent full stop. So, we jump as high as we can jump, but we'll jump onto an 18 or 24-inch box. And I train power, like vertical track and field athletes that have to do that. We do not do that. And like a high box, when you see guys land and their knees are up under their chin. Okay. So you can really pull your knees up high under your chin. That will really help you be a better hockey player.
So if you can't jump on the plates, I mean, a stability ball is a better thing to jump onto, right?
Well, juggling.
Or doing barbell back squats. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cirque du Soleil. There's a Cirque du Soleil spinoff that you could maybe,
Come on,
there's
Darren,
a future.
Darren, here's where you jump in and say, why can't I jump onto my stability ball, Maria?
Well, first of all, it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen because everybody falls off. Like, even the person that does it falls off the first time. So I don't even know why you would do that. It just, I don't know where these things come from then. That's the part that bothers me, is because they obviously serve a purpose in some regard, or else they wouldn't be out there. Or why do they get out there?
I think it's somebody is not interpreting their science properly, and they think so. When you ask people, well, why would you stand on a ball? And they'll say, well, because it's good for core stability. Huh?
Right. That's what I've been told.
I think it's good for balance. You're exactly right. 10 or 15 years ago, I used to stand on a ball too, because I've got to stand on the ball. The ball is hard to balance on. It's not a reflection of, I got to really use my core. It's like I have to balance. And then, hockey isn't a balance sport like that. When you need to balance, a lot of times you're on one foot or you're on one knee. So it's not training that element of it. And then you also have to be pretty cautious. You can't, even when you see guys barbell squatting on the ball, it's like gingerly, like, don't fall off. It's like, well, that's not how we build our strength and power, So again, if there's some reason that it's like, I really need this guy to be balanced with 2 feet while he's building strength, then get on a teeter board that's like 2 inches off the ground, and you're not going to wipe out and kill yourself. So that's another one that's just, somebody posted a video and people are like, oh, that looks cool, I'm going to do it for core strength, which it's not.
Okay, I'm pulling us back to something that is that some people might think is gimmicky, but actually has a positive spin. I think the concept, which I know Darren has embraced, and I've used it in the past in other pads. We talk about butterfly and we talk about hips. The concept of making our knee stack a little bit thicker, a little bit higher, so that, obviously that chain from the angle, as I was always taught, I learned this from way back in the day from Ian Clark, the angle between sort of the shin bone and the thigh, as high as you can get that knee off and the skate to the ice to sort of increase that angle. I believe he said exponentially decreases the amount of pressure in the hips. So the idea of building up our knee stacks, Darren, you've done it. Maria,
I do
you've
it because
talked
I have an
about
arthritic hip. So that's why.
But it alleviates the pressure.
Yeah,
So
there's evidence.
Yeah. So Maria, walk us through the benefits of that, where you're at with that. Clearly for beer leaguers, not a problem. Obviously in the NHL, they've regulated the thickness, and the year they enforced it, there were groin injuries everywhere. Not a coincidence, as many NHLers pointed out to me at the time. Where are we at for beer leaguers for kids? Is it a good idea for kids to help sort of as they come up through the ranks, maybe before they're regulated, ease that burden of having to drop to the ice, put less stress on the hips as they're dropping 200 times because their coach wants them stopping every shot in practice?
Yeah, I think absolutely. If you're looking for one of the simplest things you can do to take wear and tear off your hips, I think adding a bit to your knee stacks is maybe number one if you're not going to do anything else. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The higher you can get the knee off, the less internal rotation and the less torque on the knee. So I'll get emails, every couple of weeks, probably I'll get an email asking something like, how do I stretch the inside part of my knee? Well, that would be your MCL. And you don't want to be like that. That's not meant to be stretched unless like a guy forward falls on your leg. So, the reason you get that torque or that tension on the inside of your knee when you're in the butterfly is because your hips don't have that internal rotation. So you run out of internal rotation, and now your knee's trying to get bent at sort of a 90-degree angle. So if we can raise that knee up a little bit, it take a tremendous amount of force off the hip, knee, and ankle.
There we go.
Actually, can we chat too a little bit about, because I think some moms and dads, maybe their goalie's a little smaller and they hear, the goalies have to be really tall. I think also the blades that are, the extreme that, kind of make you taller, and they do get you more bite on the ice. I'm not arguing that, but it increases the lever and it'll put more torque on the knees and hips. So, that, and I know they're doing it for the right reason, but they maybe don't understand the physics of it. And that is not a great idea, in my opinion, is not a great idea for, younger kids. Once someone's older, making their own decisions is, whatever, it is going to put more torque on your hip and knee.
And the interesting part there is that those old Step Extreme steels that were made illegal by the NHL not that long ago, we're at the point now where pretty much every skate is actually, with the increase in the height of the holders, is pretty much achieving the same thing. So it's almost like, as much as you realize this is not necessarily a great thing, in pretty much every brand, that attack angle, that height of the skate has increased. Unfortunately, I mean, it's a good thing. Like you said, there's some positives, but I don't know if we think about the negatives associated with that. Well, the one other thing I would say too, and I don't think this gets talked about enough, and sometimes we see it with Kid Touch when they put on it for the first time at a young age, is if as much as that angle is you can increase that angle by increasing your knee stacks, you make that angle worse if the skate can't get to the ice cleanly in the butterfly. You can't have those toe ties done in too tight or the elastics too tight on them, because even elastics, they may allow the skate to get to the ice, but by their inherent nature, an elastic has tension. So if you have too much tension and you're pulling that skate up off the ice in the butterfly, again, you're increasing that angle and that internal rotation, and none of that is a good thing for young legs and hips.
Yeah, that's right. And the pad's a pretty long lever. So, if those toe ties are tight, the pad is going to torque through the knee as well. So, I agree with you there as well.
Last goalie I remember to wear them like super tight so they would be up, Mika Kiprasov. And then when I saw that, and then when he told me that he stretched 3 hours a day, 45 minutes before morning skate, 45 minutes after, 45 minutes before the game, 45 minutes after the game, it kind of all made sense to me, because his gear put him in a situation where he absolutely had to.
Wow, that's wild.
So we've talked a lot about the younger goaltenders. How about the beer leaguers? Now, I know you've got some great programs for beer leaguers if they really want to go all in, and I highly recommend them. Kevin and I have worked with both of them.
Maria's kept me healthy for the last 5 years. Thank you very much. It's the only reason I make it through seasons now.
Kevin also owns every single foam roller ever developed,
including the vibrating ones. They're fun.
Including the vibrating
They're
ones.
awesome.
Yeah, but we'll put some links in the show notes for this for Maria's programs. But Maria, for the beer leaguer who's not ready to invest that much time, what's the one thing they could do to make themselves healthier every day? Healthier, I mean, as a goaltender.
Yeah, I do think get a lacrosse ball and do some of that self-myofascial release, or a foam roller. Start with a foam roller, because if you do it with a lacrosse ball to start with, you'll be like, man, that is an evil woman. she hates men. So start with a foam roller, and then once you're used to it, go to a lacrosse ball. But just do some tissue quality work, and maybe like a bit of stretching for hip internal rotation. Not trying to force it, but just a little bit of stretching. It'll make a huge difference. And then just remember, you're not in high school anymore, so.
We just act like it sometimes. Hey, I actually need more of a program plug out of you, because I've gotten benefits out of them. Obviously, the butterfly 14-day butterfly challenge is still online. You can still find it on the website. What are the other programs you offer? Because the one thing I think, you don't have to go to your gym and see you. Carter Hutton doesn't come to your gym. Right up to the NHL level, you work remotely with some of the best athletes in the world to get them better, and you have programs that allow you to do that. The people that are listening to this from all over the world, you can work with Maria and get better. Can you just walk us quickly through the various program levels you offer, so that people hear this and they want to learn more, they want to work with you? What's the best way to get started?
I think the best way to get started is really with the free program. So obviously I have paid programs but I think, start with something free, because that tells you, number one, do I have the discipline to actually do it? Because nothing happens until you take action. So I think that butterfly challenge, it's 14-day self-myofascial release and mobility program. It is so simple. It takes less than 10 minutes a day. And most goalies get sort of 2 to 4 inches wider on their butterfly flare after the couple weeks. So, deviously, my purpose is that this is going to be so easy and take so little time that when goalies do it, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, like what the heck is the paid program going to be? I'm going to be like, that's no worth. But that's the easiest one to do, butterfly challenge. And then I have a couple other free programs. I can send you guys the links to that you can post them. One is a Beer League MVP. So it's a little more of an overall training program I designed for adults. And again, it's still pretty basic. It's not, the same program that Carter would get, but it's enough to be like, okay, I can do this. And then the other one is Back Up to Beast, which is a similar program, but for more of those high school kids who are, gunning for it.
Perfect. I can attest if I stay on any level of the programs, I stay healthy. As soon as I don't make the time, even to just stay with some of the stretches in the 14-day butterfly program on an ongoing basis, even though I know that's the minimum, like you said, talked about the rocking, as a warm-up sometimes, just to do some of those exercises that I've found are real easy to sort of get me loose. Like if I do it, I'm healthy and I feel okay, even at the crappy level I am as a goalie. If I don't, I'm done. It's usually within a few weeks I'm nursing something, so I can't recommend them enough.
What's the one thing the beer leaguer shouldn't do when he goes out in the ice for his 50-minute scrimmage to get ready? Is there a stretch? Is there a move, or is there something that's totally useless? Is there that something that we all do that we think is good and it's really not?
Not, I think, but just like when you see the guys that just get on the ice and then they do their little frog, stretch and and then ready to go, and and then taking clappers to the face mask. It you should do some kind of off ice warm up, and even if it's like, okay, well, I have to do it at home and then drive to the rink half an hour, fine, do it at home. I do my warm up at home, then we drive to the rink, and then I do a little warm up on the ice. So if you love it and it's part of your ritual, awesome. But if you can sneak in a little warm up, it'll make a huge difference.
Can you just talk to me about that before you're warming up at home before you drive to the rink? I mean, I grew up thinking that if I did much of a dry land before I hit the ice, that, by the time my gear was on me, I was back down to being cool again. So what is that time frame where it's useful? There's
good, better, best. So, I think good is doing something, better is doing a good sort of specific warm up at home, and then driving, I live about 7 minutes from the rink, so driving 7 minutes to the rink and then putting your gear on and getting on the ice. I think best is to do it at the rink. My hockey buddy and husband doesn't want to get to the rink any earlier. Mm-hmm. So we compromise. It's how we have a very solid marriage.
I actually go with better for different reasons, because I take enough shit at the rink when I pull out the foam rollers after a skate. If I bring out the giant vibrating spheres before the game starts, the room tends to get on me a little bit. So for my own pride's sake, I do all my dynamic stuff at home before I get out there, because all these other guys just drink beer, hit the ice, and hit me in the head with shots.
Buddy, you're amazing. Maria is awesome. I buy into everything she says, but if you pull out a vibrating foam roller on my beer league, I'm throwing stuff at you.
The boys will never get out of the dressing room if you bring out a vibrating foam roller.
No, we'll go with 6 skaters over that. Maria, thanks to Paul, your hockey buddy and husband, because he allows you this room to join us on a playoff night. So we really appreciate it.
I had to close the door in case I heard some bad words before we started. I just closed the door.
You're amazing, and we appreciate you allowing us to bug you as much as we all do.
Thanks, boys. I love it.
Thanks, Maria.
Thanks, Maria. You're the best.
See you.
She is easily one of the most infectious people you will ever come across. And I've only actually met her once, but it feels like she's like a lifelong buddy by all the interactions you have over text and her fitness programs. But she's always, the thing about her, she's trying to train you. I don't know whether you guys look at it the same way, but she's trying to train you. She's trying to make you a better athlete, but she really cares about how healthy you are and whether you're doing it the right way. And that's what I sort of gravitated to and grasped early on in my workings with her. Hutch.
Yeah, isn't it a theme of what we've been talking about on the podcast from day one about having good reps, not necessarily lots of reps, and she carries it right from the absolute fundamentals. So it's great to hear from her. She is a fantastic person. I've been lucky enough to visit her gym and see her in London, Ontario. She comes by Eli Wilson's Day with Carey Price camp every summer, and I expect we'll see her again there in Kelowna this summer. Absolutely infectious personality, a really warm person, and it's great that we're able to call her a friend.
And it's the same whether it's those young kids at Eli Wilson's camp that are just starting the position in many cases, or whether she's presenting at the Network Goaltending Symposium in front of 100 to 150 goalie coaches from all over the world. I've seen her in both environments, and that infectious, that sort of positive attitude that makes you want to get on board. It's continuous, no matter whether it's the podcast or in either one of those locations. So we're, like I said, we're pretty blessed. So thank you, Maria, for the time. And I hope everybody else, like, I would seriously, if you haven't checked out, every time I get a question on Twitter about where to start a stretching program, I send them to that 14-day butterfly challenge, because it really is a great jumping off point. And honestly, if you don't feel the difference, you're either not doing it or you're already in great shape.
Something we touched on was elevating the knee stacks, making them higher. Is there a particular way that you guys would go about doing that? I know how I've done it, but I MacGyver. I really do. I take an old set of pads, and I take the knee stack off that, or the foam, the softer part, and I just stick it on there. I don't make it double the size, but I just kind of make it up as I go along until something feels comfortable. Kev, would you do that? Or because there's no right or wrong way to do that.
Well, you could go to the hockey shop and talk to Cecil, because they do custom modifications of all sorts there. So that would be my first step if you're in the Lower Mainland. There are companies that have offered inserts and specialized sort of knee blocks. One of the ones that I used and had some success with, unfortunately, is having some business troubles right now, so I won't recommend them. But there are some products out there where you can buy inserts. You know, a lot of pads, they'll have the foam knee block, and then they'll have a soft sort of level connected to it by Velcro.
Yeah.
And obviously, in between those two things, you've got Velcro on either side. You could create your own layer and put it in between those two layers with Velcro on either side, and just kind of extend it upwards. As long as you're not too extreme. But there are companies that in the past have actually sold that block, but in a thicker version, including with that sort of leveler, for lack of a better term, that little piece that sticks out and wraps around the initial thin layer to sort of keep that knee stack stable and level. So there's options out there. And like I said, it's not just the reason it eases your hip is because you don't have as much internal rotation. The other thing that does is it makes it easier to get a wider butterfly flare as well.
And it doesn't have to be knee stacks, right? You could wear a second set of knee pads underneath your regular ones. We started with the G-form ones when we saw Thomas and Price using them. There's a number of different options there as well.
Yeah, and I remember giving those G-form knee pads to a goalie. He'll remain nameless. He was in the American League at the time. Liked them so much for the padding, but also for, like you said, they tended to make you a little taller. And then a couple weeks later, he asked me if there's any way I could get 2 more for them. I found out he was wearing 3 under there. Pretty much gave him an extra inch on his knees. And there are some guys that do that. But at the end of the day, wider butterfly flare, easier to get it. But you're right. It's also, as Maria said, it makes it easier on your hips. It lessens the strain on your hips, and that's a positive. So it's not cheating. It's all for the medical benefits, boys.
I think you should get a waiver like Chara gets on his super long stick.
Let's do it. that was a lot of fun. It's all about the climb, the journey, and today we went to the top of the mountain. Thanks for listening to InGoal Radio, the podcast, brought to you by The Hockey Shop, source for sports in Surrey. Check it out, thehockeyshop.com.